everybody has enjoyed their evening.
Food's been amazing.
Yeah, we have Hawk joining us.
What's up, everybody?
He says he doesn't have a speech, but
Came up prepared.
but if you have questions, this is your 7th.
Yeah.
Went the same year as Paul, didn't you? When you went, where's Skunk?
We've lost
Never been here.
Well, Paul went. Skunk Ape went in 2012.
Oh, okay.
You went in 2012 first time as well.
Yeah.
Then you become a bit of a habitual in 18th real life.
Yeah. There needs to be like a course, like AA or anything, like
HA, Hikers Anonymous.
ATA.
You're a serial hiker. So if you guys have questions or anything throughout the evening, this is a fun little session. I think what we're going to go over, hitting the highlights.
It's kind of the highlight reel. Places we liked personally, places that we didn't like, possibly sometimes, but certainly. I mean, I'll kick off with one. Everybody knows about famous places, but there's a place called Beauty Spot, which I don't actually know precisely where it is.
It's just north of Irwin.
Right. Okay, north of Irwin, and you've got the most beautiful sunset there. It's one of these lovely balls. It's quite a shallow ball, so there's no real massive climbing to get up to it, and you can then camp just down the other side. It's a little camping area. Then walk back up half a mile, maybe a third of a mile, to see the sunset. And Beauty Spot is well named. I particularly like it because the next day you then go on a little bit further down. You go up this mountain and you go up a place, it's called Unaka Mountain. And you enter this spruce forest. And I don't know whether the rest of you felt this. It felt like something out of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
It's a fairy forest.
Oh, it's a real fairy forest, yeah. And you really have to follow the white blazes in there because it's dark in there. Even if it's a sunny, warm day, it is so dark in there. And you need to follow these blazes and you're just going in and out of the trees. And it's one of those magical places that I don't think you realise it until you get there. You suddenly hit a bit, and you see these spruces at the top of the mountain. They don't impact you until you just step in there. It's as if somebody turns the lights out, and you think to yourself, "Man, this is a cool place." And it feels like it's millions of years old as well. So that's one of my favourite places.
I went through that forest in the fog.
Oh,
Even weirder. It's so cool.
so what's a favourite place of yours?
Oh gosh, we're all going to try to avoid the popular places. There's a place in Massachusetts called Upper Goose Pond,
Oh yeah.
and there's a cabin on there that the Appalachian Trail Club, what's it called? Anyway, the Berkshire chapter of whatever that thing is, that Appalachian whatever, they send volunteers out to this 2-story cabin. Is it ATC?
Probably ATC.
I thought it was the Berkshire chapter of the whatever, the anyway, it's one anyway, there's volunteers that go out there a week at a time, and you cut off the trail. It's about, I don't know, it's a mile or a half mile off the trail, and you get there and the pond has just this lovely clear water. There's a little island out. I swam to the island. Some people canoe out there. You have to get in a canoe to go across the pond to the spring to get the water and bring it back. But then you're just at this really cool cabin. They have little pool toys for people to play. It's just like playtime there. Really lovely. Bunks for everybody. And then in the morning, they make coffee and pancakes for everybody. And I don't know why, but still for me, that seems like the best coffee I've ever had in my life. I don't know if it was, but it's just a really nobody knows about that place before they go in the AT, but you have to get off the trail to go there, not very far. But Alan and I were standing there, and I'm like, I think I'm going to go check this out. I'd only gone 16 miles, and Alan was doing his usual, well, I've got 10 more miles to go. I'm like, okay, see ya. And I'm like, wow, you missed it. So that's an example for me of like, I can do big miles if I want to, but I've learned to take a chance and take opportunities and stop. And my friend Trainwreck that I met on the CDT, he said, yeah, what are you going to remember afterwards? One more 30-mile day, 40-mile day, or the fact that you stopped after 15 and hung out at the hot springs with your buds? I think that is advice to live by. Upper Goose Pond Cabin.
I hesitate to ask you because you've seen lots of favourite places 7 times now. So are there any that stay with you? That really stay?
I got a sunset on Bald Mountain, almost. It's before Irwin, after Sam's Gap. And
Oh,
it's just amazing. Like, there was a silhouette around the people, like a rainbow silhouette. It's
Nice.
crazy. Yeah, look at the sky was on fire. That's always been stuck to me. Sunsets and sunrises.
One of the things I've often said about it though is that you've got to take your views when they're there, because what you did then, you probably never saw that again, did you? The same place, you can go to the same place and the same effect won't be there.
Yeah.
So when there's a good view, it is absolutely worth stopping and taking that view in. Take a photograph if you want to take a photograph, but just register it in your mind, because that's the thing that will stay with you forever. And you know, those moments are priceless.
I like to tell people that the AT, in comparison to the other trail, has a relatively high ratio of effort to reward. That sounds like a bad thing, but that's because you're in the trees a lot. But to me, it means that all the stuff you do get, all the views you get, all the special little things, they're even more surprising and more fun. I mean, on the PCT, you can just see for the next 40 miles and you see all this pretty stuff, which is great. But man, eat up your rewards on the AT. Go take the little blue blazes, look off that cliff, go to the rock that looks like a monkey's ass or whatever. Just do it, because you will have to work pretty hard to get views at times.
I'm wondering where
Yeah.
Because you're going there next time.
Monkey ass rock. I think it's in New Jersey somewhere. Yeah.
How about you? A memorable place for you?
There's a lot, but I think one for me was Max Patch. But whenever I hiked it, you was able to camp up on it. So I know they've stopped the camping on it and all for now. But I cowboy camped up on top of it. So I was able to see the sunset and then rise the next morning and everything. Got some great pictures of it.
I remember that we got the Max Patch the second time I went, and it was a beautiful, sunny, warm day, and everybody just hung out there, just put our packs off and were lying down. I remember falling asleep, and then waking up, and I looked over, and this young girl beside 10 feet away from me, had her arms up like this behind her head, and because she'd been on the trail for quite a long time, there was this massive hair there. And I'm kind of looking, thinking, oh my God, And I looked, and I just moved my eyes up a few inches, and I was looking her straight in the eye. And she looked at me as if to say, what am I supposed to do? So we just smiled, and that's it. We just kind of moved on.
Is camping not allowed on Max Patch anymore?
No, not for right now because of the people destroying it. Last
It's
year?
not all.
It was 2020.
No, that
It
was
wasn't-
a lot of
It was
weekenders.
that was the what we were calling COVID campers. Yeah. Yeah, that was when Benny, he had gone up there, Benny Brady, and he just saw that it was destroyed, and there was somebody else that was up there, and they heard, all the commotion and stuff like that, because they were going to go up, and he had his drone with him, and he flew his drone up, and I mean, it's just littered with tents and trash and everything else, and I think it was that next weekend that Benny and some others had decided to go up there and clean it up. And I actually went to work that night, got off work, drove up to Max Patch from Florida to help clean up, and then turned around and drove back. But we ended up with probably about 8 trash bags full of just toilet paper. There was full wagons that people had taken, cases of beer that weren't even drank, quilt sets, what you would go into Walmart and buy for like a queen size bed. You had the sheets and the quilts and everything just thrown everywhere. So yeah, they finally put restrictions on it. No camping up there. I don't even think you can go up there after a certain time.
But I hope when you see it, you don't see it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See it like
it's been
supposed to
cleaned
be.
up now.
Yeah, it's
So
cleaned up now, so it's going to be great.
yeah.
What about you, Julie? Please.
I think for me, not so more the views or I love sunrises and sunsets, don't get me wrong, but I also love the smell of the outdoors of the trail, and not Clay's feet right now, but I'm kidding. But the first time going north, I was actually climbing Roan Mountain, and this was early 2007, 2008. Roan Mountain now has a switchback on it, but before there's a switchback to get up to the top of Roan, it was straight up. And that was the first time that I had absorbed the smells of the AT and what that meant to me. And when you climb Roan Mountain, you will. And
A lot of mossy smell.
it's mossy, it's Christmas. It's like, who opened the candle up here? And then I kind of stopped and I was like, it's not a candle. This is real. You're part of this now. You're in nature. You're in the forest. And I'll never forget that smell. Just the kind of wet, mossy. It's always kind of wet when you go up to Roan Mountain, and it kind of, you can think about it now too as you go up there. I could smell it. Very distinct smell, and that's one smell. The second smell is kind of the change in seasons if you're going northbound, and that happens right when you climb Mount Greylock in Massachusetts, and you come down off Mount Greylock, and there's another mountain there, and I distinctly remember standing north of Mount Greylock, and all of a sudden you could feel the cool air, and I was like, I'm out of this like hot, like the heat of the Middle States. You know, I'm almost to Vermont. You literally start to smell Vermont. Do you know that mountain Harding? What is it?
Just past Greylock?
Yeah, there's another hump just past Greylock before you go down into
Vermont.
and it's crazy because you almost have to stop at this tree where the sign is, and the trail takes a distinct left, and you start going down all these switchbacks about a mile before you are going to cross over this bridge that takes you up 4 miles to either start the log trail or you enter Vermont. It is so distinct. I mean, I can feel it. The air is cooler. There's a different vibe on the trail in that area. And those are two distinctive things for me that that are never going to leave. And you can't describe it, but when you guys get there, you'll remember, and you'll have your own smells as well. That's what I call them. It's like, when I smell grass, I immediately think of my dad mowing the yard and stuff like that.
When I
So
got up-
smells really.
When I got up north and all the pines up there, it just reminded me of Christmas. It's like I just stepped into Christmas.
I think also the weather makes quite a bit of difference to how you experience the day as well when you're up there. And I've got a great picture of me sitting with my back to the camera, which actually improves the picture of me. My back to the camera, looking up towards Baldpate Mountain.
Oh,
And that white I guess it's granite out there. And it's just. It's almost like, because if it was raining, it'd be a nightmare to walk up. But on a beautiful day, it just curves gently up this mountain, and you can look at it from South Baldpate to North Baldpate, I think it's called, and it's a dramatic picture. And you've got to go down to go right up this beautiful curved mountain, and you've got all the, what do they call them, the cairns? Yeah, further up north you have these cairns, down these paths of rocks which guide you up that path. And that's one that will stay with me, probably because the weather was so darn beautiful that particular day.
I don't know if people get this reference, but when I was on Baldpate, I felt moved, and so I gathered up a bunch of pebbles and I spelt out Pet Cemetery, Sematary. If you know that story, you know why I would put it up on that stony mountain.
You got to tell it now.
I don't
Well,
know.
okay, the Pet Cemetery is story. It's a Stephen King book.
Oh,
there's a pet cemetery. This family moves in, and then beyond that, they're of course warned never to go up there. Is the other cemetery, and it's up on this stony mountain. It's just like Baldpate, and it's an old Micmac burial ground, you know, whatever. And so something terrible happens. But so I spelled that out right on where the trail went, and hoping that the next person that came by got the reference, but they probably didn't.
I saw something spell out nose poo.
Oh, that's good.
Free Brittany.
That's awesome. That is great.
I was like, I can't believe somebody touched all those to spell that out.
That is great.
It's interesting you have the list there on your phone, and none of us have really, our greatest moments have not actually, my greatest moments on the trail have not necessarily been at the McAfee Knob or, you know, at the highlight reel. My highlights have been in the weirdest places. And I guess the moral of the story is you never know when your highlight reel will hit you.
Yeah, well, in that case, I still think going to McAfee Knob at dawn, I recommend everybody to go there, to stay in that shelter just before, get up there, hang around till the sun comes up, because it's a shattering experience in your life, and suddenly it appears, and you're just watching it and watching it and watching it, and you think, this is about as perfect as life can get, when you see the sun come up in that way and just light up the whole area around you. On the other hand, of course, you may have a terrible day weather-wise, which is why I always say take the views when you can, because I've been lucky twice to go to McAfee Knob, and each day I've got great pictures. So I've always been grateful for that. And while you can take as many pictures as you like, there is nothing like standing on that mountain or on that overlook with your feet hanging over the side, which I urge you all to do if you possibly can, and get your photograph taken, and it's one that will stay with you forever. Aren't you going to do that?
Not
I couldn't do it. Haven't done it yet. I can't go out there.
Oh,
So you guys have talked about things that you've seen and things that you've smelled. I'm very nose oriented. I smell everything. I smell rocks. I smell pine cones. But there's a sound that really got me. I flip-flopped so that I went and did Katahdin on August 25th, and then I started back to Vermont where I flipped up from. And I swam. After I had Lyme disease, I promised myself I would swim every opportunity I got, and I pretty much did, including in the Housatonic River. And I kept swimming in there in Connecticut, going in and out. I got all these pictures of myself with a smile. And when you get up far enough, like close to Massachusetts or maybe in Massachusetts, they started these signs that say, if you are pregnant, do not swim in these waters. Do not eat frogs and fish from these waters. I'm like, well, what the? It's contaminated with PCBs. Oh, I was swimming in it the whole time. Of course, it's fine. But
that does explain quite a bit to me.
Yeah. Well, you know, the sound to me, I think it was Joe Mary Lake, but it might have been like Sunset Pond, I think it's called. Swimming in Maine. It was near sunset. It was in the water. Totally fine to swim at that time of year, late August, you know. And I know you Vermonters just roll your eyes because you hear this all the time, but loons.
Oh,
And I just about shivered my hair out of my head. I was like, the loons. Wow, is that a great sound? It is unbelievable. And at sunset, and I was in the water. The downside was when I came out, I had a bunch of leeches on my leg, but hey, they're easy to pluck off. So I've never had a leech.
has everybody heard a loon?
Gosh, you guys hear them all the time, don't you?
Well,
I love that sound.
Not as common as you might think.
Really?
Into the interior of New Hampshire and Maine.
Yeah. Oh, they're not so much of a...
We have them on the lakes, but you'll take notice of them. They're not that common.
It is quite a sound.
That is a pure gift to hear a loon. I'd never heard a loon before until Vermont.
Yeah. I don't think I had either. I don't think I did until Maine. So that's a great.
And then going down, you mentioned Roan Mountain earlier on. I had a bit of a nightmare. Went down Roan Mountain. I was meant to meet my ex-wife. I didn't, and didn't work out. But you cross the road there. You're at a place called Carver's Gap. You're about 5,200 feet, I think it is. And then if you've got a lovely day, you're lucky because you then go up these few steps, through the woods a bit, and then up a hill, and you're on Jane Bald. Mm-hmm. And the balds are magnificent up there. And there's Jane Bald, there's Little Hump Mountain, and then there's Hump Mountain. And these are just meadows at elevation. And to walk through those feels like a privilege, as I mentioned the other morning, especially when you look down at the clouds 100 feet or 1,000 feet below you, with all these other hills sticking out of the clouds, looking like little islands in the sea. That was a special place for me, Jane Board.
I tell people if you do nothing else on the AT, go from Carver's Gap to 19E.
And have breakfast there.
And then have breakfast, yeah.
The breakfast at 19E.
I think I would tell people to go from hike this section with the Virginia Triple Crown, which is the Dragon's Tooth, McAfee Knob, and Tinker Cliffs. Is it Tinker Cliffs?
Tinker Cliffs, yeah.
And what are the ones up north? There's something else similar. But yeah, that is a stretch of eye candy, just fun, geology, really interesting walking, climbing.
Yeah, and don't feel that McAfee Knob, it is probably the most iconic site there, but Tinker Cliffs is also a magnificent site because you can walk as close to the edge of the cliff as you wish, and it is straight down, isn't it?
It's great.
For a long way. So you can walk as close as this if you want to. So
Yeah, the trail is pretty close, isn't it? Yeah.
The secret of McAfee Knob is all those pictures are a little bit of an optical illusion. It's not that far down. It's far enough down that you could die if you fall, as we now know, unfortunately. But there's a tree there, and it's not, you look like you're hanging out in the middle of space. It's not that crazy.
I'm still not doing it.
I sat on the edge of it with my friend.
Depending on the camera angle, also there's that one little drop down where you can't tell there's that second, so you can literally stand.
You go across and you can get that.
How far we are, as the camera's just right, it looks like you're right on the edge.
It's a little bit of an illusion, but it's a pretty illusion. It's very nice.
And another favourite is finishing the 100-mile wilderness, partly because you finished it, but secondly, you go down this road called the Golden Road, and you come to Abel Bridge, and then you try to avoid turning, well, I tried to avoid turning left, so I wanted to see the whole thing I got halfway across the bridge, and I kind of turned round, and the trees were just changing colour at the time, and there's Katahdin on a beautiful sunny day right in front of me. And that's another one of those things that will always stay in my mind. I've got a photograph of it. It doesn't do any justice to what I actually saw. I can see it right now in my head, and the hairs on the back of my neck always go up when I think about that moment, knowing that a day or 2 days later, I'll be climbing Katahdin. To see it from that distance, it looks magical.
I remember the first time I saw Katahdin. It startled me. I said,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just all of a sudden it's like, boom.
Is that the one across the lake?
Yeah.
Pemmadumcook Lake, I think it's called. Yeah. And you're still 40 trail miles from Katahdin. Those of you who know my podcast, that picture is of me at Pemmadumcook Lake with Katahdin in the background. Though you can't see Katahdin because it says Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail on it. But yeah, that's quite something.
It truly stands. I mean, it's for me, it's like seeing Mount Rainier. It's like it'll take your breath, and you're like, wow, that's in the next couple days.
Yeah,
incredible.
This state we're in right here, honestly, for me, is my third favorite state. And at Atkins, you cross I-81, and there's a bunch of hills after that for a few miles that have been cleared long ago for pastures. And we went through at the right time. I guess it was early May or something like that. Absolutely covered with wildflowers. We started spontaneously singing The Sound of Music, my friends and I.
as one does.
And it really, God, that is one of my moments of deep impression on the whole
Is
trip.
that your third favorite state? What are your two first?
Maine, New Hampshire, Virginia. Guess it's my least favorite state. Vermont's low, but Pennsylvania. But Vermont is low not because Vermont's a bad place. It's because I just was burnt out. And the first half, I thought I was going to quit. And then, yeah, it was just rough for me. But it's a pretty state.
Another pretty cool place, well, I think it's a very cool place. There's this long sloping path, a walk up to Chestnut Knob Shelter.
Love that.
Yeah, and there's the shelter at the top is a fully enclosed shelter. There's, with a door, which is made of stone.
Yeah, and that's just south of here. How many trail miles?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, it's,
But you probably know.
Burke's Garden.
But yeah, exactly, Burke's Garden, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 50 miles away.
Because that's the beautiful view. There's a shelter there, then you walk away from the shelter about 50 yards away, and there's a parting in the trees, and you look down, and it's a place called Burke's Garden, and it's known as God's thumbprint. And it's as if this huge God has put this thumb down and created this this beautiful fertile area in the middle with this ridge all the way around it, isn't it? Yeah. It's a remarkable sight to see. And apparently there's a hostel down there now, isn't there?
There is. I've never been to it, but there's one down in there.
Yeah.
That's a special place as well.
Many of you, if you're northbound, will be going through the mid-Atlantic states when it's very hot. And again, after I got Lyme disease in Pennsylvania, I just vowed I will swim every chance I got. One of the places to swim I don't know that people know about, and people often have derisive things to say about this area, but right before you cross the Hudson River after Bear Mountain, the public pool that's there, if you're a thru hiker, you can go in for free, and it feels great. The water's really cold. There's 8 trillion kids in there, but I loved stopping and swimming there. Oh, yeah. It was great.
There are at least 8 trillion.
Oh, my God. You can hear the kids from like a half a mile away, but it really is nice. And then
Filthy man, mummy.
yeah, exactly. I highly recommend you swim in Nuclear Lake. That's a good place. There was a nuclear accident there in the 50s, but they tested, I think the DEA, or not DEA, Department of Energy, DOE, found out there was no residual radiation after like 1984 or something.
That's up the Hudson.
No, it's past there. It's in New York.
That's another swimming place.
Yeah, it's just all, every swimming hole I could hit, every single one. It was great.
You can swim a couple times in New Jersey too.
Oh
There's
yeah,
a public beach.
Sunfish Pond. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What is it? Something Stock, Fanastock Park. That's cool. There's a beach there. Sunfish Pond, Sager's Ravine in Connecticut. Really cold water, but it's like in the trees, and it's a ravine, and it's just got these deep, bubbling pools. Yeah, I could name for you every single
soak your
place.
feet in Sage's Ravine.
Oh, yeah.
Make yourself stop.
It's really neat. So many places. You're going to see them all. I guess my big advice would just be look at everything you can, even if you're in a big hurry. Like I was. I stopped.
I tell you a hostel I liked. I didn't like first time. I liked second time was Bear's Den Hostel.
Oh yeah.
And I remember racing because there was I wanted to get a place at the hostel because I think for $30 you got a room, your laundry, a full-size pizza, and a pint of Ben and Jerry's, which I thought was a bargain. And I had to have it, because otherwise I would have had to go past the next day. So yeah, Bear's Den Hostel's great. You can camp there. You can stay in the hostel itself. And that's also run by the ATC, I believe.
Isn't it right? So here's what I'm thinking. Is it the Appalachian Mountain Club that runs Upper Goose Pond Cabin? I think it is, the Berkshire chapter of. So I think the ATC does run that. And the ATC does run the Blackburn Center, which is 10 miles on from Bear's Den Hostel. That's a cool place. There's a caretaker there. I still don't understand why, but I was there on July 3rd. And there's a gap, and we were looking out toward Washington, D.C., and we saw all these fireworks displays. And then the next day was July 4th, and it was foggy, and so there were no fireworks. So maybe they did them early. Yeah, I was disappointed at Harper's Ferry. I didn't think it was friendly to hikers. I did not. It just didn't do much for me.
You're talking about the ATC or Harper's Ferry itself?
Harper's Ferry, it just was expensive and touristy, and nobody knew it. I got chased down by 2 people going across that bridge leaving town, asking me, "Oh, what are you doing?" And there was this Marine guy, and he was thinking of hiking the Appalachian Trail, and so he chased me down, and he said, "Give me what's your biggest piece of advice for hiking the AT?" And I gave him my biggest piece of advice. And it's still my biggest piece of advice. Put everything back in the same place every single time, without exception. And he looked at me and was like, "That's the most boring advice I've ever heard." He wanted something better than that, but it was just a strange, I didn't feel welcome there. It wasn't, I don't know. And the ATC, yeah, they're grouchy people, a lot of them. The Boiling Springs office, woo. Now, boy, do they hate hikers.
That's an interesting. That's an interesting place to stay. If you go to Boiling Springs, which is a very, very pretty little town and a really lovely place to have breakfast and stuff like that.
to walk through cornfields.
You do. You walk through cornfields to get there, and there is a place to camp just before you get into the town. It's a little field. Very exactly.
Do it.
And you know what? I did it, and I regretted it desperately because I got in the field, I set my tent up and that, and they said, you may hear the train come through.
Uh-oh.
Oh my God. It came right, I remember hearing this, I could hear you can hear it approaching about a minute before it comes past you. You think, oh, there's something going on out there. And then you hear it coming faster and faster and louder. And I was nearly up in my tent, crouching at the same time. It felt like it was coming right through.
And the horn blows.
Yeah, did you stay in that field once? Oh my gosh.
I've heard a horse.
I didn't stay at the campground because I got there whenever it was starting to get dark, and so I couldn't find it. And so how you go through the cornfields and then it kind of makes that left turn before you go into the town. So I went down that way and tried looking for the camp area and couldn't find it. So I was like, well, crap. So I came back, and that little clump of woods just there on the left, I strung my hammock up there. And just about the time I dozed off, here comes that train, scared the ever-living crap out of me. But that's just like where the little train station is to take you into New York, right there on the AT, the little AT platform. I stayed at that hostel right there, and that train does the same thing. And I think they do it on purpose. As they pass by, they'll just set on that horn because they know people are camping there.
Yeah, you can go into New York City from there. You can go into Washington from Harper's Ferry, Washington D.C. So that's kind of a pretty cool thing to do. I went to the station and my picture taken there, but I wasn't going to go into New York City. But there are things you can do. You can see New York City from the trail from a long, long way away, can't you?
Bear Mountain.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see.
There's a couple of times I think you can see New York from the trail. Bear Mountain. There was one other place.
What's the ridge where the flag is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Coming out of that another AMC or ATC building.
The flag, the painted flag?
The painted flag on the rock right there.
You can see it right after that.
The 9/11 flag, yeah.
You know, people talk about Pennsylvania being rocky. It is, but not all of it. So the first part is actually very pastoral and pleasant, I think. There's lots of walking through open fields, cornfields, lots of stuff. I mean, once you get to Duncan and after that, it starts to get rocky. But even then, people are like, I knew everybody was exaggerating, baloney. Yeah, it's not that rocky. And then like 2 or 3 days later, they're like, oh, okay. Because the last, 60, 80, do you think?
It's pretty miserable.
It's pretty
It's
rocky.
the little rocks. You
But-
can't get away from
But
it.
the secret truth is, I mean, it is extraordinarily constant. But really, most of the trail after that is almost that rocky. So I was, however, like one of the great things that New Jersey has to recommend it is the fact that it's not Pennsylvania. And I was very happy to get to New Jersey. Cross that river, I was like, I didn't have a good time. Pennsylvania is low. You're never more than 1,000 feet up. Most people go through it the heat of summer. Very hot, very humid. Crazy endemic Lyme disease, like got Lyme disease. You are in the green tunnel. There's not a breeze. There's not a whiff of breeze. There's bugs. The views are few and far between.
So appealing.
It's really, it is tough.
On the AT, don't you?
But you know what? I still have fond memories of it, but I do think it's arduous once you get up on those, you're doing that ridge game and then down. The climb out of Palmerton is nice, though. That's pretty cool. Around the Superfund. What is it called? What is it called?
Lehigh Gap.
Yeah, Lehigh Gap.
They just rerouted it 3 miles each way.
Have they?
Oh, really?
Before and after that gap, they were going to reroute back to the original AT.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful though.
Nice.
Still go up
So is it
Lehigh
up
Gap,
top?
though.
Is it up top?
Yeah, gap, but as soon as you summit that rock pile,
Yeah.
you cut off to the right. You don't
Oh,
look
it's
down
on the
Palmerton.
right. Oh,
Wow, you don't look.
that's pretty neat.
You see Palmerton before you get to Lehigh Gap.
Oh, wow. That's really
on the
cool.
other side of that.
Oh,
Now, there were a lot of berries on that other side. Are there still berries?
Yeah,
Oh, good. Oh, good.
no water over there though.
interesting.
Oh, wow. That is great.
That's good though. It's good though.
Way better.
Trying to think of other places that memorable places. I think this place was.
Yeah, a lot of the hostels. I mean, this one, Mountain Harbor, loved Mountain Harbor, Shaw's. I loved Green Mountain Hostel up there also.
So when I was in Maine, I met a guy named Just Charlie. He's from Alabama. He started section hiking in 1978, and he was on his last section. He was finishing. I had a great time in one shelter talking to him. It was just the two of us. And I thought it was really interesting what he said, because he said, back when he started, it was still more like the original AT, and you walked through a lot more towns and a lot more valleys and past a lot more graveyards and through more farm fields and stuff. And he said, the rerouting is great, and, there are reasons for that. But that most of the rerouting essentially threw it up on top of a ridge. So the trail is very much up in the woods on the ridge. And Just Charlie said, he liked it a lot better back then because there was more variety. And I thought about that. I like it just fine the way it is. But I did realize that I really appreciated those weird times when you're just going through an open field somewhere, or a cornfield, or going past the cemetery, or going through a little town, even a little road walk. There aren't very many, just little bits. Because it's not monotonous, but it is much the same. When you're up on a ridge top and you're in the Green Tunnel, I thought that was a really interesting point he made. So I have a great appreciation for even the flattest 3 miles of the trail, which is the canal, the towpath on the canal after Harper's Ferry. And I mean, it couldn't be flatter. It's not just this in the trees, it's not rocks. And I learned to appreciate anything that was different. And there's lots of it.
I think you have to take it, I think you have to take the Appalachian Trail in its totality. I often say it on the podcast about, I always say Pennsylvania is a tough state, but I kind of, it wouldn't be the same without Pennsylvania either, and I think it's important part of the trail, and it's something you can talk to your friends about later and say, you would not believe where I tried to put my feet down and I just couldn't put them down without getting a sharp rock underneath them, and it is tough, but I would never want to skip that part of it because it's a perfect trail as far as I'm concerned. And also, and I know some of you, I know you're going southbound, but you've got northbound as well. It is perfectly set up to go northbound. Because you finish your garden and you've worked really hard to get your legs ready for New Hampshire and Maine. There could not be a more perfect way. I would think going south, after you've done those states and perhaps a few others, it becomes a whole lot easier and less exciting, because I was always looking forward to New Hampshire and Maine before I did it the first time, and when I did it the second time, I was still looking forward to it just as much, because it is a magnificent part of the country and you feel totally privileged to be there. And then you see a moose and you think, oh my God, this is just remarkable to see. And moose, the way there are moose around, moose for some reason poop in exactly the same place, don't they? And there's piles of it as well.
Poop right on trail.
Piles of it, just tons of moose poop. And so they're around somewhere, and if you're lucky enough to see one, it's a real...
Looks like tater tots.
I got to see 2
Whoppers.
Whopper.
Did you guys find that the hostel culture is quite happening down here in the South, but once you get really to Shenandoah and beyond, it kind of really tails off until you get more up in New England again? I mean, to me, there just wasn't the same. There's almost nothing like this.
The Southern hospitality.
The Southern hospitality. The Southern hostels are amazing. And then I think up in New England, they are really amazing. But in between, there's houses where you can stay and nice people. But I didn't find the same kind of thing.
No. I now thinking back, I stayed in motels more than hostels, yeah.
So that's just something to be aware of.
I don't know. I just cannot get over the number of hostels, 130.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
My experience during 2006 to 2017, I don't have the 130 hostel experience. In fact, some of the hostels that I really loved are now closed.
Mm-hmm.
One of them down in Georgia in Dahlonega, the Hiker Hostel.
Mm-hmm.
That was the name of it. And it was incredible down there. You probably didn't stay there, did you? 2012?
Is Graymore still open?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can camp there.
Yeah.
There's this place called Greymore. It's a monastery,
Yeah.
a Franciscan monastery, I believe, and they have this huge ball field, baseball field, which is basically just a field, and there's a little mini pavilion there where you can charge your phones, and they let you stay there, and you can order pizza, and there's a car will turn up with your pizza, which is great, which of course everybody does. And it's a great,
Oh, the Greymore Friary, that's what it is.
but it's so lovely.
Bowler, shower.
Yes.
But it is so lovely there. One of the reasons it's so lovely because you have got lots of tents there. It becomes a little tent city,
Yeah.
and you meet a lot of your friends you haven't seen for some time, and it's just a lovely community thing.
Really cool place. I love that place. That's where I met Alan.
All right.
Yeah. Two guys from Boulder, Colorado. And Al, he's this older guy. He was 69 at the time. And I used to write for the newspaper in Boulder, and I wrote a column for you, so a picture was in the paper. And we're just chit-chatting with all the people, and he says he's from Boulder. I said, oh, I'm from Boulder. He said, really? What's your name? I said, Clay Evans. And he looked at me and he said, you're not Clay Evans. And I said, well, I am, but what would the chance be that in the middle, at this monastery in the middle of New York, that I would know who this minor newspaper columnist was in your hometown and then try to punk you that I'm him? And he's like, no, you're right. Okay, I believe you. You're Clay Evans. But we're still friends. Yeah. It was like...
You can imagine him having that conversation, can't you, as well?
It was
Beating up on himself.
He's a great guy. God, he's amazing. He's done almost a Triple Crown since turning 65. Still working on the CDT. So...
Why do you keep coming back? 7 years, 7 times.
It's the people. Like I've said it before, it's like, for me, the AT is more like walking around my neighborhood, like stopping at a friend's house. It's like a 2,200 mile neighborhood. It's awesome.
And you just don't know who your neighbors are going to be until you meet them. That is really the best. It's just the best part. It's hard, and it's such a weird thing to say because the land and the moose and the skies and everything is so fantastic. But I was surprised. I was one of those people who said, well, ultimately it's the people. Me. I'm like a misanthrope, you know?
Do what?
That's what I'm saying. I'm a misanthrope. I kind of like, not...
Isn't that
don't
funny?
like
That's what a lot of people say. I'm an introvert. I don't like being around people, but there's something about getting on the Appalachian Trail. And
Mighty Blue, how many people on your podcast have told you that it restored their faith in humanity?
Well, I have to stop playing it because I've recorded it so many times. I said I'm not going to put that on.
But it's true.
We're going to have to put something else or say something else.
I feel
Because
like
restoring your faith in humanity, there's been virtually everybody. It will happen to all of you. You'll get out on that trail, and while your faith may not be shattered with humanity, I know you'll find. I think you'll find people to be at their best. The best version of themselves is out on that trail. No, it's not. You're right. It's everybody around there.
I mean, because I've met some of the greatest people in the trail towns and everything else. It's almost like it's an alternate world out on the trail, and it's a much better world than what I'm used to living.
See that we can treat each other that way on a daily basis, whether you voted for guy X and I voted for guy Y, or you're this religion and I'm not. It does make me wonder why the heck we can't do it all the time. It's weird. It's quite weird how...
Well, a lot of that stuff you don't even bring up or talk about on the trail.
Mighty Blue hiked with a guy almost the entire trail, and they could not be more opposite in pretty much every way.
Literally everybody.
Yeah, and you were perfect for each other on the trail. So why not? I wish the world were more like that.
It opens up your mind to new adventures, I think.
Yeah.
Being in them situations where you're like,
So great.
feeling vulnerable.
Yeah.
There's everybody around is the same way.
Yeah.
I've got to say, this weekend has made me want to go again.
And when you're down, people will buoy you up, and when they're down, you're gonna buoy them up, and it's just, I don't know, it's like living on a kibbutz or something for the whole way. It's just, I don't know why it works so well. It's an amazing thing. Talk to Miss Janet about it. She can really wax on this one. I was on the PCT, and there were 2 guys that I was hiking with that were struggling in the Sierra, and they were not having fun. And it wasn't on Mighty Blue, actually. I think it was on Backpacker Radio, but they had just interviewed Miss Janet. And I said, listen, you guys, next time you get to town, download that episode and listen to it, because she really talks to people about, she's just this big, matronly, warm person. And she really gets at the heart of what you were talking about. Why are you here? What are you doing? There's nobody forcing you to do anything. But I had those two guys listen to that episode to just get more clear on what they're doing. And one of them ended up skipping up and leaving the trail. It wasn't his thing. And the other one, who's a good friend of mine, he just did the AT for the second time. He wants to become a triple crowner. He said, thank you, because listening to her just completely renewed how I was thinking of this hike. So she is a good researcher. She's been on Mighty Blue more than once.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, and she, just look up these things. So Backpacker Radio, there's a little potty mouth, but it's how we are. And there's no potty mouth on Mighty Blue, but just go search if you listen to podcasts for Miss Janet. There's a little bit. Yeah. But seriously, it seems like you guys don't necessarily need it, but just that idea of like how to think about the mental game, what to expect, your ups and your downs, and what to do about it. And boy, she's good to listen to, just to be aware of like, oh, you really can survive anything if you want. And you can quit, and that's fine too. She's awesome.
She is. She's great.
Let's get her up here next time.
And the AT spoils you, because when you try to do other trails, you feel like you're cheating. When the AT's like your first trail.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm a serial monogamist when it comes to trails. I am definitely most into the one that I'm currently working on. I just found that out, and that's just the way it is. So
you guys who are going to be hiking trail, what are you looking for? Is there one spot you're looking forward to, or are you looking for you're obviously looking for the totality, but are there any particular places you've heard of you're really looking to see? Just the brown sign, I could tell.
You know what? When I did the 50 miles on the long trail, one thing that surprised me, and I think I'll probably see it on the AT too, but I expected to have views constantly. And you're in this green tunnel, and in 50 miles I had 3 views. That was
treasure them.
Yeah.
They're few and
but I did hear loons.
You know what? I feel it's really cool to look at trail videos and stuff, and I admit that I started looking at Little Skittles videos before I went on the PCT, and then I stopped because I realized that one of the things I really enjoyed about the AT was I had read AWOL's, his story of his hike, and I'd read some of the books, and I had pictures in my head of what it was going to be like, that Cog Railroad, for example, coming up Mount Washington. I had a picture in my head. I had a picture in my head of what the Pennsylvania rocks were. Nothing like what the pictures in my head were. And that was so much fun. Like, oh, this is what it's like. And I'm not saying don't look at YouTube, but I feel a little sad that we live at this time where there's not much left to your imagination if you, and it makes sense, you get excited, you watch 800 hours of YouTube, but I think leave a little mystery if you still have that opportunity. Let it roll out in front of you and see what it's like. Because I was very wrong in a lot of ways, and that was an excellent.
And when you come up and around the corner and you see Franconia Ridge just stretching out in front of you, I guarantee you're going to gasp. In some form or other, you'll think, oh my gosh.
And it's way better as a Sobo because it's downhill for you, but you guys still had to come up. It was gorgeous.
Wow. You think it's better as Sobo?
Yeah, the views are better. But all you gotta do is turn around and go northbound.
Yeah.
I camped on top of Garfield, that little spike right before Lafayette, and there's that, I don't know, concrete whatever thing up there. And I was right on the tippy top of that thing, and then the sun went down, and I could look across the valley to whatever mountain was the next one over, and I could see the point of my mountain's shadow on there, and I could see, like, that's where I am. Unbelievable. The sun, just a big bloody ball. Wow, that was a moment. And that was a steep-ass uphill and downhill to get up and down that thing. Yeah, rocky and crazy. And
Was the trail cross Mount Lafayette?
Yeah. Go to the summit and
I've been
then
up there.
down Franconia Ridge.
I'm a teenager, but I've been up there.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great.
the whites are beautiful, man. They're really something else.
My favorite mountain is Mount Madison, which is like a picture book a kid would draw a mountain, two sides straight up, meet at a point at the top, and it's all rock scramble all the way up there.
Yeah.
And you stand up there with the wind buffeting you around, and you're looking around, and I hadn't realised how awful it was going to be to climb down from there. That is probably the worst climb down I think I had.
And then you have to deal with the surly hut people at the bottom.
They're all silly.
I hate the hut system.
You walked up that way, didn't you?
What is the hut system?
Yeah, coming down Madison, all those rocks are moving.
The hut system is run by the Appalachian Mountain Club. It's quite odd. So there are these huts, and basically it's people from, they're mass holes, a lot of people will call them, but they're from Boston pretty much. They come up, they have a lot of money, they can spend $120 a night. They hike in, you know, it's just one hike, but it's fun, it's backpacking. And there's a staff there that very much caters to those people. And they cook dinner and tell stories. And you, as a thru hiker, are scum. Not really, but sort of. You really aren't supposed to cowboy camp in the Whites. There just are, you know, it's supposed to be designated places, but people stealth camp a lot. What you do have available is you can do work for stay sometimes at some of the huts. And what that is you come in a limited number of hikers. They'll say, sure, you can stay on the floor, like in the dining room. And you can eat. Sometimes they'll give you food, but you have to wait up like a scullery maid and do the chores before you can go to bed. So I did it at 1. I did it at Lakes of the Clouds, which is off the south side of Mount Washington. Remember, I was going Sobo. And, you know, it's fine. It was very windy that night. I was glad to be inside, but man, the crew, as they call themselves, CROO, they're pretty nice, but you are really a serf. And you are there. And the thing I didn't like is you had to wait until every last one of those paying customers decided to go to bed. And it was like 11 o'clock before we could gather up all the dishes, do all the dishes, and go to bed. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this again because I don't want to stay up till 11. I got up. I didn't stay for breakfast because I didn't want to wait till 10 to leave. It's an odd system. I don't like it. It's very...
I think it's improved massively in 2019.
Really? I didn't have a bad experience in 2012. I mean,
You got work for stay?
You got work for stay. Most of them, they only allow like two through hikers to stay, with the exception of Lakes of the Clouds, and that's because of the size of that one. Well, the size of that one too.
They literally have like this little stone room around back because the danger of the weather on Mount Washington is somebody could die if they don't let you stay. They call it the dungeon, and that's what it's like. Now, you don't, but the problem is you're supposed to stay only in official campsites or shelters or campgrounds or huts, and they're few and far between, and there are very few spaces in the huts anyway. So people do stealth camp illegally. Frankly, I think it's okay, even above timberline, because it's I mean, the weather can change. It was 70-mile-an-hour winds the night I was there. I was very glad to be inside. So, I don't know. I mean, I tried to avoid the whole thing as much as I could, and I was pretty successful. That was the only one I stayed at. There was a shelter with a camp host. Oh, he was gone for the season, but there's shelters, there's little campgrounds, the Osgood campsite and places like that. Yeah. But you can sort of avoid them, and they're just not, people have good experiences. I did not, but they're really not intended for thru hikers.
Now, most of the official campsites and stuff like that, where they have a host, they also charge for those too, though.
Yeah. Those hosts, a bit like the room you ladies, oh, not you, sorry. The ladies are staying in, the tent you're in, the host stays in something like that. It looks really nice and fancy. They're really, really nice places, and you get this tiny little area between trees and they charge you about $10 or $15 to stay there. So
it's an odd system. I don't like it. I don't like it.
See, I mean, I bypassed those. I did, like I said, I stayed in all but one of the huts and got work for stay. So, I mean, I didn't even have to carry food through the Whites. I mean, we got stuffed with the food that they make, because the crews do make a crap ton of food usually.
And that was a good thing that we got to eat the leftovers. And we were at the end of the season, so they gave us a lot of stuff that they didn't want to haul back down.
Well, that's why they prefer the hikers to eat as much as they possibly can, because they don't, whatever they have left over, the crew has to hike it all out, just like they have to hike everything in.
And for some weird reason, they insist on using these backpacks that they make. They're like really old school,
Look like wooden
out of
sleds.
canvas and like wood slats, and they look horrible. And I talked to one of the guys like, "Wow, you guys hump stuff up here with that?" And they're like, "Yeah, it sucks."
So a young woman was coming on my program shortly. She's one of the members of the crew, and she said first day she did it, she had 90 pounds on the back, all the way up to the.
And it's not a comfortable backpack. It is a jury rig piece of junk.
I saw one of the crew members come in at Zealand Falls hut carrying that. Actually got a picture of him. So it just amazed me because, like you said, it was just slats of wood with rope, and he has all these boxes and everything else just kind of strapped to it. And he comes walking in, and it's like, my God.
And I don't know why they would do it that way. Like, why can't you just, I don't know, weird.
I think it's on our. We're gonna touch on the how to get through the whites tomorrow. That's part of our conversation.
We can skip that one.
Well, I mean, I didn't have a bad experience going through the whites. I mean, I
love the
loved
whites.
it.
I just
Yeah.
didn't like the hut.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to think this is a bad experience. This is part of the experience of being on the AT. Getting yourself a floor for the night sounds awful, but if you get a little bench next to the floor, that's pretty cool. And it's the whole thing is an adventure. You know, you kind of you absorb this adventure. I look back on that time of my life when some spotty little oik of about 18 years of age gave me this huge dish to try to clean. I was going at it for about half an hour. He looked at it. It looked worse after half an hour of me doing it. And he said, "Yeah, that's fine." I've been scrubbing away but he gave me food, and I got a spot in the corner and that, and I felt pretty darn good because, you know, us more mature hikers, let's say, we kind of appreciate the idea. Well, I did anyway. I appreciated the idea of acting like a teenager, which is kind of what you're doing. You're acting like a young kid who's prepared to slum it a bit and have a good time. None of what we said just now should ever be interpreted as a bad time. This is still the most wonderful thing to do, however demeaned you may feel you are because you're having to scrub some pot or whatever. It is great to do. I would do it again tomorrow happily.
I loved my experience. I mean, I think one of the huts, yeah, we washed a couple of dishes, and it's not a whole lot that they even have you do. One of the huts, I think I washed dishes. Another hut, I think all I had to do was sweep up. And I think at Lakes of the Clouds, I mean, they were full with their guests. My work for stay was to talk to the guest about my through hiking.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Cool.
I did not. Oh, lots of people do it. Every one of us just has individual experiences. For me, that was the one I did, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. I slack packed the Wildcats and did that whole thing back to the hostel, and then I was able to. I went from Mount Washington to that next campsite. You know, I stopped in Zealand Falls Hut. I stopped in these places, but I was able. So if you don't want to do it, there are limited spots anyway. So it's not like everybody's gonna. That's a frustration too. Just as like you, again, I don't like to have a gun to my head, and you're like, oh, am I gonna get a work for stay? So there are ways to work around it, and listening to folks here, obviously some people have a great experience. I did not.
The biggest thing, if you do decide you want to do work for stay, you just got to figure out that time to get there. Because if you get there too early, they refuse you because they feel that you have to. It's between 4 and 5. If you get there between 4 and 5, you're usually pretty good. But like I said, they only usually allow 2 or 3 people at most of the huts. So you just got to kind of be there before those 2 or 3, but also make sure you're there between 4 and 5.
Another reason I don't like it just because I guess I'm too selfish. I just don't like having to organize around somebody else's interests. So you can, but the problem is usually they're often full. You certainly can, and then boy, you'd be treated like a princess.
Yeah, you love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are treated quite well if you're a paying guest.
Actually, I think it was Zealand Falls hut. there was a few of us. I think there was 3 of us that ended up getting work for stay there, and there was some of the guests that had, paid for their rooms and all that, and a couple of them backed out, but they couldn't get their money back, so they actually offered those bunks to us. The guest offered them to us.
Oh, I can't imagine the crew would ever do that.
No, crew probably wouldn't, but I mean, the guest was like, we paid for them. They can't say anything, so y'all want them, they're y'all's.
Well, I paid to stay, and I loved the whole thing. I guess I'm one of those people, but I don't care. So I wanted to have an amazing experience in the Whites, and I don't care what anybody says. And I'm a section hiker. I can do whatever I want, and I wanted the HUD experience, and it was wonderful. And
if you pay, it
the
would be
through
great.
hikers that I met that were going through there, they had a great experience. So I didn't have a bad experience in the Whites.
So did you have to reserve ahead of time?
I did. I reserved. I did the Whites in 2 separate years, and both times the week before. The week before, one person, I called. They said these are the ones that are open, so I had to base my itinerary around which hut was open and my hiking ability and what I could do, and I did it. It was fantastic. It was fantastic. I met great people, and not everybody there was a snob, and that's not the experience I had. So I'm sorry you had a bad
No, I
experience.
don't think
but
people were snobs. They were the paying guests, and they were the priority, and that's fine. Hey, if I could pay, do it. But it's unlikely as a through hiker you're going to be able to time it and get your reservation.
Or you just budget it in. It's just part of your.
Well, but the problem is getting the reservation because they're super full. So as a sectioner, I don't know. They told me that because I asked if I could pay, and they're like, no, these fill up months ago. That's what they told me.
There's so many cancel. I caught both times the week before. Well, I mean, if you want to get a group of 10, you're going to have a problem. But if it's just yourself.
If you just do one, I would recommend Lake Clouds because that sets you up perfect for that tree line episode you got the next day.
Yeah.
8 miles above tree line. That's
right,
great.
yeah.
Well, you can see that we all have different experiences with it, and that's the point of this. You get different perspectives. You can do that if you want. If I'd been able to pay, I would have done it.
One thing none of us mentioned was a place that's supposedly the hardest mile of the trail, which is not, is Mahoosuc Notch, which is basically a ravine full of boulders and bus-sized boulders, and you scramble sometimes underneath the boulders, and then you push your pack out, and you get through this little gap in the boulders, and there are instead of having white blazes, they have white arrows where you should be heading for, because you literally treat it like a mini jigsaw puzzle. I wouldn't go through that by yourself at any time, personally. So I think it could be one that may give some of you some difficulty, because it gave me some difficulty certainly. But we took 3 hours to get through it. Most people do it in about an hour and a half, I guess. But we actually had lunch there because we had a beautiful sunny day. So we just sat on one of the rocks and had lunch, and it was just a beautiful experience. And the worst bit about Mahoosuc Notch is that the fact you've then got this huge climb up, is it Mahoosuc Arm, and then this long exit, long down to Old Speck Mountain, I think it is. Yeah, and it just goes on and on and on. But the notch itself is wonderful. It's great fun, and when you get to it, you'll think, "Oh my gosh, this is bigger than I thought." I don't care how much you've seen it on YouTube; it is way bigger than you think, and you'll love it.
I saw people push dogs through there, like big dogs. Like, that's tough.
What do you think? Have you thought? You've obviously seen Mahoosuc Notch, haven't you?
I thought about it. Other people have taken dogs, so there's a way.
He's pretty agile. This guy that I saw was Theo, was a 10-year-old retriever who was very unhappy. Poor guy. He just was tired. But I think an agile dog can do it. No
I
problem.
carried a dog all the way through the Mahoosuc Notch around my neck.
Yeah.
In a bag.
Yeah.
Because this one might be a bit too big for a bag.
Yeah, it might not fit
There's
around my
some
neck.
holes that,
Yeah.
You don't want to fall down.
in. You can get them.
Yeah, you don't want them to fall down. They're so deep in the middle of the summer. You can peer down in the hole and you feel this like refrigerator, freezer, cold air come up out because there's ice. It's like an ice cave. Yeah, and it is like more than air conditioning. Like opening the freezer door just hits you in the face. Really cool.
It's a great
Carry PR in a bag?
around the night.
Right in it. Wow.
And down Madison.
Oh,
wow.
Can I ask one worst experience?
The worst.
What's your worst experience?
I've told y'all mine.
That's what Mighty Blue and I was talking about that the other day, and I mean, I know I had some, but the good experiences just totally outweigh the bad to the point that I don't even remember them. I mean, the only one is like what I was saying the other day, which wasn't even really a bad experience. It was just a miserable experience for that day. Was whenever I'd done the 36 miles in the rain, and you know, every time I'd get to somewhere where I thought I was going to be able to get in and get dry, I couldn't. You know, but I mean, that was the most of it that I can remember. I mean, the good just outweighs the bad so much that
It in no way diminishes the good for me either, but Lyme disease. I just can't emphasize to people enough to take that seriously. It's not fun. And it's really not fun on trail, especially if you're stupid and you don't know what's happening to you, which was me. It was awful. I was so sick and I had no idea what was going on. And I've never been the same. I mean, and it was boring recovering, and it was hot. I was in Pennsylvania, and it was just, it was awful. So take that seriously, in whatever way you think best. Really, really.
I think the only other bad experience that I had that kind of made me mad was Charlie's Bunion. I went up to Charlie's Bunion, my friend and I, was having lunch there, and I got up and started to walk, and somebody had used the blame bathroom up there, and I ended up stepping in it. And it's like, my God, you know, but still, again, nothing detrimental, you know, it's just enough to make me mad, you know, but.
I think not knowing what to do. I mentioned earlier on about standing under a tree, having hailstones hit me and getting bigger and bigger, and literally not knowing what to do. You know, I just didn't know what to do. For a second, I was totally nonplussed. And when my temperature starts spiraling, you start shivering like this, you know you're in trouble straight away. So I thought, well, the only thing I can do is carry on walking. And as soon as I started to walk again, I was fine because I warmed up and I was okay. As long as you're warm enough on the trail, you're going to be fine. You can get as wet as you like. And we talked about getting wet earlier on. Don't worry about that. You'll be okay with that. But you start getting cold and you're shivering, you're uncontrollable shivering, you're in all sorts of trouble by then. And that worried me because I allowed that to happen to me because I didn't know how to respond to it. But then as soon as I realized how to respond to it, I did, I got on with it, and I was fine within minutes. And then I remember I went down the wrong side of the mountain, I went the wrong way. I called somebody who had this bed and breakfast, and I remember thinking about this, that about an hour after I was shivering at the top of that mountain, I'd showered and I was eating, I think, cookies and a cup of tea out of a china cup in her living room. And it was just the biggest transformation I'd had. And something from being terribly frightened and suddenly realizing the trail provided for me, because I found this woman who found me, even though I was on the wrong side of the mountain, and she took me back to her home and I was fine. Worked out great.
Out of all the thousands of people that I met, literally thousands on the trail, there were a total of 4, 2 groups of 2, that I felt off about. And it wasn't terrible. One was 2 people came in to a shelter where I had already set up. They started playing music, smoking weed, smoking cigarettes right in front of the shelter. I just got up and left. It was one of those places up north where there's like 2 shelters within a mile of each other. I just went to the next one. And then there was a shelter in Pennsylvania. These 2 people, I don't know, probably meth or something. I don't think they were real hikers. They were just trouble and amped up. And the guy lost his phone and he started accusing people. I left then too. So those are rare. They weren't dangerous. And the reason I pointed out is because the thousands of people I met, and everybody's kindness and support and generosity and friendliness just overwhelms those two very minor negative experiences that I have with humans. And I think most people have that. There aren't that many people that you just really like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
You know when something don't feel right, and if something don't feel right, it's easy to, either speed up to get past the situation or slow down to let the situation get further ahead of you.
I could tell you about. I just remembered actually about one guy I met in the shelter. He was hilarious. I think he'd been over refreshed, let's say, the night before. He was slightly hungover, and we started talking about music. And he says, "I'm obviously British," and he said, "Well, Brits have got no decent bands."
Okay.
And he then said, to be fair, he said, "Well, apart from the Beatles, of course." Said, "Yeah, the Beatles are pretty good. How about Rolling Stones?" "They're not British." Pardon? So I said, "Led Zeppelin? They're not British." I mean, this went on and on. Pink Floyd, they can't be British. It was the whole thing. The Who? I mean, and in the end, he was said, "This is ridiculous. There's no possibility they're British." He left the shelter about 10 o'clock that night, muttering to these bloody Brits.
That's funny.
He had no idea.
Was he young?
No, he was he was slightly over refreshed from the night before. Wow. So yeah, he was struggling.
Was that one of your funniest, memorable moments?
No, it was just one that came to mind. I'd forgotten all about it, and suddenly I realised, the bloke who didn't believe any bands were British. Yeah, apart from the Beatles.
I think one of my funniest, memorable moments. I was telling earlier. I was up in New York, went up Bear Mountain, made it to the top, looked around the tower and all that, and then whenever I started down the north side, I'm heading down and I see this lady come walking up, and all she has on one of the bladder packs, just water. So she's just day hiking up to the top to look and everything. But she's coming up about halfway down. She's coming up, and of course I kind of stepped to the side and trying to be polite. I looked at her. I was like, "Hey, how you doing today?" She stopped and she looked at me with the most disgruntled look on her face ever. And she looks at me and she goes, "Well, I'd be doing a lot better if I was going the easy way like you." And she just stormed on past. And it hit me on what she had said, and I just busted out laughing. And of course she stops and turns and gives me another, shit grin, shit look. And, but I just started thinking, I was like, okay, going the easy way like you. You're coming from the parking lot going to the top. I just walked from Georgia, It was just funny.
And Austin's thinking, I've either got the blooper reel or I've got the real thing. Very cool.
And the West Virginians who showed up at Jenkins shelter, these kids, and you probably know everything. They showed up with like a moonshine jar full of clear liquid and then purple crystals. Do you know what that is? And they said, "Oh, it's like explosive. We're going to use this to start a fire and all this stuff." And we're like, wow. And they were telling us, they told us, well, if you mix these things together, you can, but you got to do it in just the right proportions and not very much, or it'll cause a huge explosion. Anyway, they went out and were trying to cut down green spruce, and they did not know what they were doing. And my friends and I laughed so hard just imagining them hiking off down the trail the next day, tripping into one another and just exploding because they had a jar full of the purple crystals and white clear fluid. I don't know what it was, but it was like a Harry Potter thing.
The only things that I know of that you can mix like that is, I think it's called Magnonite and the antifreeze to start a fire, but
I don't know what it was. They just claimed.
I was given some moonshine by some guys one night at a shelter. That was pretty. Oh dear, I won't be having that.
Drinking enough of that to get drunk.
I won't be having that again. I tell you. Oh dear.
It's fire water.
Yeah. God damn me. Yeah, it wasn't good.
There are funny moments all the time on the trail. There just really are. I love that.
And you'll find the fun in all the things, even those things that are tough as well. At some stage, you'll just think this day cannot get any worse, and you just laugh at yourself, and you should do as well because it's what it is, and you know the next day will be better.
because it couldn't possibly be worse than that day.
I think it teaches resilience too, honestly. I think that people who can't learn to laugh when they trip or fall or whatever, they don't stay on the trail.
Whenever I was going up Hump Mountain, I don't know if it was like this, you know, whenever you was hiking, there was that deep rut going up. I'm trying to, you know, of course, stay on the trail, which to me, that rut is the trail. I'm going up that, and the wind is just whipping. 1 minute it's whipping this way, next minute it's whipping this way. So it would start to blow me over this way, so I'm pushing this way, right, and all of a sudden it would switch and go that way, and I fall over this way. So I'd stand up, and then, I mean, I just went up the hill, back and forth on the ground, and it was so aggravating that I just started busting out laughing. And the guy I was hiking with, he thought I was laughing at him because the same thing was happening to him. Yeah,
That does. Are you talking about big ball?
hump.
Oh.
You got little hump and then hump.
Yeah.
Where the big steer or bighorn steer.
Mm. This poor trail is worn deep in a lot of places. Mm.
Hiker Midnight.
Yeah, it's Hiker Midnight, I think, guys.
Is it 9?
Yeah, no, it's not quite yet, but we're,
By the time we all go to the restroom, it'll be 9.
yeah. Well, you know, I hope we've not put any of you off this, by the way, because this is still the magical place to be.
Even the few rough experiences, they're type 2 fun. They just become part of your story. That anybody who had no problems or no thing that they didn't like. And here's the thing, I think this is true. There were some days for no reason that I was just cranky and didn't feel good. Sure. Don't know why. And hopefully you're with people and they buoy you up, and tomorrow it's your job to buoy them up. It just happens. I mean, you're doing a hard thing and your body is working hard. It is a great experience if it's for you.
And you can eat like a condemned man, which is always good.
Something I would suggest, it's something that I done, and I love that I've done it, is keep a daily journal, would you? Whether you do it on paper, I used an app on my phone.
I've got my notes and things like that, but also my photos.
Yep.
If you flip up on the photo, you can see where it was taken, a map of where it was taken.
Yep.
Most of all, you can see the time it was taken.
Time, the date.
You say an hour later I was at this place, and you can kind of fill in those gaps from where you were.
And the only thing is on the AT, on these long trails, I'm in airplane mode a lot of the time, so it doesn't record exactly where you are and this and that. But it is a photo. I refer back and forth to that when I'm writing too. It's like a photographic record. Take pictures. Take pictures not just of views. Take pictures of people. Take pictures of campsites. Take pictures of shelters. Take pictures of weird stuff. Don't just take pretty pictures of views. Right. Everybody says that.
The views will be your worst pictures.
Yeah, and they never look as good. But yeah, it's really sweet to have photos of the people you were with, and I didn't do a lot of that. And everybody says that, like, dang, I wish I'd done that. That is a real good piece of advice.